Hey, y'all. Welcome to another episode of Tech Backstage. We are live. It is Wednesday. I just had to check my watch to make sure it wasn't Thursday. It's been a crazy week this week. And I am joined today by Stephanie Cox, the CEO of Lumavate. Stephanie, how you doing?
I'm good. Thanks for having me today. I also feel like this week has flown by as well as this half of the month.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's like we're midway through November already, right?
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah. I was just commenting to my wife yesterday, which I believe was Tuesday. I was like, I'm pretty sure it's Friday. And which is why I'm not sure what day of the week it is. And you're right, this entire year's flown by, and now we're like what 6 weeks away from Christmas and the end of the year. So I'm like,
hmm
I'm not ready for any of that. I don't even have the tree up. I haven't done decorations. Haven't done any Thanksgiving shopping. So it's going to be an interesting 6 weeks, I would say.
Yeah,
Yeah.
race to the finish.
Yes,
So
absolutely. Well, Stephanie, excited to talk about all things marketing today. It's definitely a topic that, as an engineer, I am starting to understand that is quite a bit more complex than that we make it out to be. And I'm kind of humbling myself a little bit and going back to learning how to I guess work with our marketing department. So I'm excited to talk about that. But before we do, I would love to talk a
yeah,
little bit about your background and your origin story, if you will, and how you became the CEO at Lumavate.
yeah. So I have 20 years of marketing experience. Started out my career like many marketers do. I had the pleasure of working at a smaller company, and so I was able to learn a lot of marketing. And then really, I think that success is two things: it's hard work and it's a little bit of luck. I happened to graduate college in the early 2000s, where not every company had a website. Social media didn't exist, and I was the young person, so I kind of got tasked with like figuring out this world that is digital marketing. So really kind of lucked into that from a timing perspective and worked really hard. Worked at a number of really well-known companies throughout my career. And one of the things I always tell people is when certain people reach out to you, you always take the coffee. Even if you're not looking. Just meet with them, maybe you know someone that is. And that's what happened at Lumavate is someone had reached out to me about the business. They were about 18 months old at the time. They were looking for a marketing leader. And I was really honest. I was like, I'm super happy where I'm at. I'm not looking to leave. Maybe like I'll meet you for coffee. We'll see if I can help. And by the end of that conversation, I was like, oh man, this might be the biggest opportunity of my career. Because it was a kind of a what I always tell people with marketing roles is you want something that's like 65, 70% of what you've done before, right? You know how to do it. You're really good at it. You're going to come in, you're going to have quick wins. And then you want like 30 to 35% that you've never done before, whether that's a different, you know, industry, whether that's different ICP, whether that is a different stage of the company. So you can be challenged and pushed. And that's part of the reason why I joined Lumavate. And it was around the same time, maybe a year before, I had lunch with someone that was on the board of another company I was at. And he had told me during that conversation at the very end, he goes, "You would make a great CEO one day." And I laughed at him because like hysterical laugh because I thought he was joking. And the reason why was because in tech, there aren't a lot of women leaders. I never saw a lot of women CEOs, when I was in college or even the first 10 years of my career. So I had never thought about that being like something I would do. And a lot of tech companies, your CEO is an engineer, oftentimes, right? A technology person that comes in, or maybe like that, someone that had a sales career. It's rarely a marketer becoming a CEO. But that's kind of when the bug got put in my ear that maybe I should consider this, especially when he explained he was not, in fact, joking. He was very serious about this and why. And then at Lumavate, I just had some really fantastic mentors that helped me, really grow into this role that I have today, which is running the entire business.
That's all. Yeah, I love that. And the CEO journey is an interesting one for sure. I think it's something that I also felt like I was happy being an engineer and just kind of accidentally fell into being an entrepreneur. So, here we are talking about it on a podcast now. But I love
Right?
that. Yeah, but I think it's a really interesting point that you make because, um, if you look at Lumavate, for example, as a CEO at Lumavate, yeah, it's a tech company, but based on things that you have previous experience with. And
Yes.
so, I think when you build great products, you don't have to, there's the people that have the engineering mentality, but then one thing that I've learned, working in tech is you don't need to be an engineer to build great products. You need to
Hmm.
understand the problem that you're trying to solve intimately. You need to be able to solve it in a way that nobody else is solving it, and you need to be
Yep.
able to do it. I mean, there's a lot of people out there that, a lot of people liken being the CEO of a tech company to, oh, well, you're not Twitter, or you're not a unicorn, right? Like, you don't need to be, a
Hmm.
$1 company to be successful, and you don't need to be a $1 trillion company to be solving problems effectively, right?
Yes.
So that's, and that's, everybody expects you to be a tech CEO, like you're like, like Jack from Twitter or Elon Musk.
Right.
Most of us just wake up in the morning and like get our coffee and go sit down and like get on Slack and, join our meetings, like we're not like in the papers or anything. So, um, what you're talking about being a CEO, you, it's interesting because like, I'd never be a CEO, but it's at the foundation. You guys are, kind of what I would consider to be your technology company. You're kind of a marketing technology
Hmm.
company too. And those are the problems that you're trying to solve. So you have that domain expertise, right?
I do, and I think it's part of the reason why I've been so successful at Lumavate. I don't have a formal sales background either. I was never an account executive. I've never carried a bag, so to speak, with like a quota as an individual person. But from pretty much day one, I was involved in the sales process at Lumavate because I've been the marketer we're selling to. So
Yeah.
I've been the person that has, sold products into Home Depot, Lowe's, Best Buy, put QR codes on packaging 12 years ago when people didn't even know how to use their iPhone, let alone how to like download a QR code reader and scan a QR code. So it's funny now seeing that all come to life where everyone knows how to do it.
Yeah.
So I've felt their pain and their journey, and I think that's part of the reason why they relate to me so much. And when we have built our product, I often hear, "You're solving all of my problems." And I'm like, "I know, because I had those problems and there wasn't anything for me, and I this is what I would want in your
Yeah. Yeah.
shoes."
No, and you're 100% right. And, one thing, there's, I think sometimes marketing gets a bad rap because I think there's a lot of people out there trying to like do honest marketing. And like what you're talking about right now, you not having any experience in sales, well, that again, like you have the domain expertise, and you guys are solving problems that you've had previously. Like, I think that's the purest form of being a
Mhm.
salesperson, because it's not gotcha marketing, it's not gotcha sales, it's not, hey, I'm trying to sell you something that you don't need. And that's where lifetime customers come from. That's where brand
Yes.
loyalty comes from. That's where, and there's so much out there right now on the marketing side around like just trying to get like 0.1% like, click through. And, but realistically speaking, when you take a step back and you think about who would benefit from my product,
Mhm.
and what are the things that I can do to elevate them, because in those situations it's a win-win, right? Your
Yes.
company's making money, their company's solving their problems, it's mutually beneficial, right? So
Exactly.
you don't have to be a saleswoman or a salesman. You can be somebody who has honestly dealt with these things. And that's where, for example, you having a marketing background, running a company that
Mhm.
solves marketing problems, that's why you're effective as a salesperson. That's why me as a CEO running, an engineering consultancy, I can be effective in the sales room, even though I'm not necessarily a salesman either, because I can speak intelligently to what they're trying to fix, and the problems that they have, right? So, and I think that's really what good marketing's about, right? It's about finding the
Mhm.
people that would benefit from your solution.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I want to dive. We spent about 10 minutes talking about being executives, which is something I could talk about forever. But I do want to dive into the topic because I think this is something that's really important. It's something that I hear a lot about these days, and I think that it's very relevant, right? So
Mhm.
today we want to talk about democratizing marketing,
Mhm.
consolidating the tech stack. But I think one of the first things that I'd love to sit down and talk to you a little bit about is just from the perspective of empowering marketing teams without necessarily needing to get devs involved, and having a tech stack that works for the marketing team without necessarily needing engineers, and kind of circling back to like, what is marketing technology, right?
Yeah. So I think this has been, probably the biggest challenge for marketers. And there are probably over 10,000 now MarTech tools in the market. Even after there's been consolidation, there's so much, and there's all of these different point solutions, there's big platforms, and it's hard to know where to start. And some of them don't require any resources to get started. You can do it yourself. Canva is a great example, right? You can use Canva and you can design graphics without a graphic design background. Then there are other solutions where, yeah, you could maybe do something with it, but you really need a developer involved. And the problem is, while I love developers, I love software engineers, I think they're wonderful, they don't care about your brand color. They don't want to change the hex code. They don't want to make all these, they don't think creating a new landing page is worth their time. And I get that, right? And so part of it is starting to go, what exactly should marketers be able to do? And what is a best use for engineers and their skill set? And I think this is oftentimes where you talk about like marketing and IT coming to heads, and especially like mid-sized and enterprise organizations, and this whole idea of shadow IT, which is typically it's marketers doing things they're not supposed to and using platforms that are not approved by IT. And the reason it happens is because if I want to, and I've been at an enterprise, this has happened to me, where, it's going to be 6 weeks before I can get that text change done. I can't wait 6 weeks to get a text change done. Like, that's crazy. And you need to find solutions for marketers to be able to make those types of changes and even bigger ones and create new digital experiences without needing to talk to a developer, without needing a third party agency or dev shop involved. And there is technology out there that does allow that today. Some of it's good, some of it's not as great. And part of that is figuring out like what is going to be your company's, and we could talk for a long time about the nomenclature that's used by analysts on this topic, but what is going to be your, company's philosophy around enabling the business to use technology? So Gartner and Forrester are going to call them citizen developers, which is a horrible name because they're not developers. They're business users who do not know how to write code, but they're using platforms that are low or no code to do very specific tasks for the business. And that can be everything from building complex applications to, designing a social media graphic. So that is, to me, like the biggest forefront of what companies are facing today is how do you start to enable specifically your marketing team, because they need to go fast the most, but it really starts to become an entire business change and transformation. And that's what we've seen at Lumavate too with our customers. It starts in marketing, and then HR is like, wait a second, could I create like an onboarding experience for new employees? Sales is like, well, what if could we do this? And it starts to really empower the organization and take some of the burden off of IT from doing things that really they don't have capacity to do either.
Yeah. Well, and I think you're right too, just because, especially on the marketing side, I think marketing has a tendency to need to iterate very quickly. And
Yes.
there's a lot of, at least from my experience, limited experience, because I'm an engineer, but, my limited experience, that's where landing pages come from. That's where A/B
Mm-hmm.
testing come from. That's where, trying to understand, if this messaging is better than this messaging, and, trying to really get to the heart of how can we make an impact on the people that are viewing our marketing material, and how can we get them to engage with us. And for engineers, that's, I mean, yeah, it's a problem that needs to be solved, but it's not an engineering problem. It's very specifically, a marketing and outreach problem, I think. And
Yep.
it's something that I've seen, and it boils down to a lot of, especially in startups, people wearing multiple hats. I've even seen marketers who've sat down and learned how to code, trying to speed up the process. And
Yeah.
I feel
I've
terrible
done
for
that.
them. Yeah. So, like,
My VP of engineering, he's like, you know enough to be dangerous. Like that's sometimes how I get things, I've gotten things done in the past. I'm like, well, I'll just do it. And
yeah.
then like an engineer looks at my code and they're like, well, that was one way to have done it, not like the best way or the most efficient way. And I was like, well, this is what you get.
Yeah.
I don't get what I need. I go faster.
Yeah. Oh, I just feel so bad though, because it's like, I mean, you think about how many years it takes to become a software engineer, and like I can tell you from experience, like I've been up since 5 this morning writing code, and most of, what I do on a daily basis is like check Stack Overflow, and like it's not a fast process. It's not like people imagine like we're just sitting there typing 200 words a minute, and it's not like that's not the process, and it takes a long time to even get to a point where you can be effective. And I just, for somebody who comes from a different background, like it's just got to be almost an agonizing
Mhm.
experience to try and go through that. And a lot of it's kind of unnecessary for what you guys are trying to accomplish on the marketing side, right?
It really is, but I think sometimes if you don't realize that there's technology out there that can enable you, like, that is your only other option.
Hmm.
You don't know any different. And I
Yeah.
think and there's also, I think, this perception, and I see it the most in enterprise organizations, honestly, or, organizations where the kind of the culture is build versus buy, where the
Yeah.
only way it could meet their needs is a custom solution. So clearly, there's no way a platform could give me that. And the reality is, like, that was true 5 to 10 years ago. It's not true anymore, for
Yep.
the most part. So part of it's going in and saying, like, okay, how do I change, like, fundamentally how I think about getting work done?
Yep.
Like, that is, I think, the challenge that we're facing with marketers is it's, well, I call my agency or I put in my support team ticket request. It's not, oh, I go use the solution. I do it myself because I could maybe make that change as fast as it took me to log the support ticket in the past.
Hmm. Yeah, no, I think that's, yeah, I think that's a great point. That actually, I have on my notes over here to start to ask you about the challenges that marketers face. But I also kind of want to roll that into, since we got about 13 minutes left, I also want
Mm.
to kind of take that question, um, talk about the challenges you face, embarking on this sort of initiative. But I'd also love to understand a little bit more about how do you choose the tech stack that you're going to consolidate down to, because that's actually something that for me, it's honestly like sensory overload. There's so many options out there, and I'm trying to figure out how that. It's like trying to put a puzzle together. You're like, how does it all go together so that I can get to the end result that I need? And it's overwhelming.
It is, and I think as I can say this as a marketer, we tend to have shiny object syndrome too, which is like, "Oh, there's something new and so and so's using it, like, I need it too." And we don't ask a lot of questions, by nature around like, well, how many people like, I know there's posting on LinkedIn that works great for them, but how many people did it take to manage that? How much did it cost? All of those things. So, I think the first part is really starting to if you think about going into a tech stack evaluation or building your tech stack for the first time, there are lots of different ways to do it. One is kind of a lot of people still to this day, which surprises me, build it and want to build it themselves because they don't believe anything out there exists for their business. I would never recommend that route ever for literally any
All
company,
also, yeah.
right? Like just never. Unless you are a technology company who is building a product to solve the problem. Then I think you get into this kind of like, do I want a platform that does all of these different things, or do I want point solutions? And I think there is, and this is just starting to happen in the market, but kind of a middle ground. The Mock Alliance is a great MACH is a great example of this. But the whole idea is that there is a lot of technology coming out that is microservice based. So engineers should I use the engineering word, but it's microservice based, right? And they don't have a front end. So you see that a lot with content management systems coming out today. Craft, Strappy is a good example of that, where right they do the content management, but how your website front end looks is completely up to you, and that could be through custom code and a developer building it, or it could be using a third party system.
Hmm.
And to me, that is the type of technology you should look for. Is ones where they are not focused on the front end experience. You need a platform for the front end experience,
Yeah.
right? And then you need different solutions to manage your content and data that don't necessarily need to deliver it on a front end. Because let's be honest, the person that's the best at delivering content management and helping you do all of your tracking, especially if you're like a pharmaceutical company or a medical device company where you have to track every single person that looked at it, medical and legal review, they're not going to be the best at doing that and building an engaging like front end for consumers to use.
Yeah.
and
No.
experience, right?
Yeah.
And so this idea of having almost like a layer of architecture that is like, here's my CRM, here's my content management or my digital asset management system. Here are my social media tools that I use. Here's my e-commerce, and then those all kind of sit under a front end platform. I think is really the future of where technology should go, and what we're starting to see happen. It
Yeah.
also starts to allow you to go, okay, I'm not beholden to one company anymore. Or just because my website's built on this platform and it's also my CMS and it's also my DAM, I can never move off of it. I hear that so many times.
Yep.
So a lot of marketers get stuck with the tech stack that someone else chose for them, sometimes a decade ago,
Yeah.
because it's too hard to move over. So this type of approach allows you to plug and play a lot more, which I think is really what marketers need, because technology does move so fast. What worked for you 18 months ago may not work for you today.
Yeah, I agree. And I love actually where you're going with this because kind of a shameless self plug here for a second. But I'm a really big fan of Jamstack websites and what you just talked about. We work with Strappy and we actually use Contentful and Sanity a lot more, but Craft's
Yep.
another really great option. But it's the idea of decoupling everything, right? And
Mm-hmm.
I think it's really important for people to understand that. Look, low code and no code can work too, but the difference is that look, low code, no code is specifically I think it's a little bit of misleading because somebody's doing the coding. It's just not
Yes.
you. Right.
Correct.
Right. So it's you're getting this system that it's low code, no code to you, but somebody else is doing the coding. So what's great about building microservice architectures is that there's likely going to be some coding involved, but the fact that we're using pre-built solutions like a headless CMS to put a front end on top of, it cuts down on the development time significantly. And another thing is if you do it right, we build, for example, we do, websites for large tech companies, and we don't build it on pages. We build it on reusable sections. And so you
Yep.
just go into the page, you drop in a bunch of sections, you drop the content you want into the sections, and you just hit the publish button and away you go.
Yes,
So
exactly.
yeah. So I think that's a really good point. And then the second point that you brought up too, that I think is really important, is that by going to that microservice architecture, if you decide that you want to change one piece of
Mm-hmm.
your tech stack out, you don't have to change everything out. If you want to go
No,
from, for example, HubSpot to Salesforce or from Salesforce to HubSpot, you don't need to change out your entire website. You just need to change out the endpoint that your forms are submitting to, and that's it.
exactly. And I think
Yeah.
that's like a fundamental shift that I don't know if most marketers understand is happening. And I think it's also right. A lot of IT departments that maybe are forward thinking, that are understanding okay, this microservice based architecture is the way that we should be, as we think about technology across the business, should be going. They don't have that conversation with their marketing team and say, when you're doing vendor selection, you should look for vendors that look like this, mainly because, not a ton of marketers understand microservices. But I think if you just explain what it means, and I use the word Legos a lot because I think it's something for everyone to be able to understand. What it really does is give you different Legos for what you need to plug into something. And those can be pulled and swapped out. And it gives you a ton of power to customize the solution that you need for your business at that point in the business's journey,
Yeah.
right? The solution you need when you're a small business is different than when you're an enterprise.
Oh, 100%. I think that's a really great point too. And, I think that, as you change, you're going to grow. And I mean, we've only been around for a few years and we've already iterated as a company a few different times. And
Yep.
so, what's working for you, even one week to the next might change. And, the other thing is that we do with some of our clients specifically is sometimes there's things that you need to drop in temporarily as well, right?
Yep.
I think recently we had to drop in some stuff that measured performance on mobile devices, so we could track, the device behavior, because we were seeing some weird stuff. But you just drop it in, you do your measurements, you pull it back out again, you're good to go.
Yep.
So, and that's, I think, a really good example of how, even week over week, month over month, your changes as a marketing team might temporarily change as you're trying to do, circling back to some of that A/B testing, being able
Yeah.
to drop that stuff in and say, hey, do we have better performance here, or should we keep it the old way? And you want to give the marketing team enough control over that through tools that, again, I think it's going to be hard to get 100% away from the code, but being able to really get it down to the bare minimum, or,
Yeah.
tools that integrate together, I think is, a really good way to do it as well.
No, completely agree. I also think
Uh,
as you're, thinking about this, as part of it is like, what are the guidelines for your business
yeah.
around the use of these types of tools? And what kind of framework are you putting in place to make sure that anyone, starting with marketing, because we typically are the ones that go out and do the things we shouldn't do ourselves, and buy the software without talking to IT about it. But how do you start to put in a framework for what that process looks like and make the decision that you want to empower the business to use these types of tools? And these are, this is a library of tools you can choose from. This is what they're best in class for. And they're all approved, because in that sense, what you're doing is the behavior is going to happen, right?
Yeah.
But you were saying, okay, I'm recognizing the behavior is happening, but now I'm going to put some guardrails around it. I'm actually
Yep.
going to spend time and I'm going to enable them so they're doing it correctly, and I can oversee, or at least have a place. And this is one of the things that Lumavate has done really well, is we have like this command center where you can come in and you can see all the digital experiences across your entire enterprise on one screen and what stage they're at. So if I'm an IT leader, that kind of visibility doesn't exist if everyone's doing things piecemeal with an agency, with a third party tool, with a dev shop, internal IT resources. I oftentimes don't even know what's out there, let
Yeah.
alone how to wrap my hands around it.
Yeah.
So having a strategy, I think, is really important as well.
Yeah, and I love what you're saying too about making sure it's approved, because I think one thing I hear this question a lot. Well, why can't we just use WordPress? Well, it's like, well, if there, and I'm not saying it's a bad solution in all cases. I'm just saying, as an example of enterprise level security, that
Yep.
is one of the most hacked, and most sought after for seeking out vulnerabilities, that people that are looking for those types of things are looking for,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
And if that is tied into any of your enterprise resources, like if it's living on a VM within your enterprise, like core, like cloud,
Mm-hmm.
there is the potential for that to turn into a vulnerability for the rest. It's what they call an entry point. And
Yep.
so, um, when you sit down and look at these technologies, you need to make sure that, again, they're decoupled from anything that contains sensitive, user information, especially if you're in an industry like healthcare, where you might be bound by HIPAA compliance, or
Yep.
even though a lot of us are in North America, even those listening in, because the internet is global, we're also, somewhat bound by GDPR and what happens in Europe. And if you aren't paying attention to those things, and you implement some sort of technology that introduces a security vulnerability, yeah, if you're $100,000 a year company, like, it's probably not going to be a big deal, because I
Yeah.
mean, but if you're a million, or tens or hundreds of millions of dollars, and that gets introduced, there can be serious ramifications for that stuff, right?
Yep. Exactly.
We got about 1 minute left, so I just want to sit down and, Carlos, really quick, do we have anything else that you want to announce for the rest of the week?
Yes, Eddie, thank you so much. Right down below, you'll see tomorrow's interview. That's going to be with John Curran, the VP of Cybersecurity and Engineering at QCR Holdings. So that's what we have for this week. And there's a whole bunch coming. It'll be all on the website, as you know. And please go to takebackstage.live and you'll see what we have in store for next week. It's not a lot because, as you know, Eddie, there's a lot of holidays coming up.
The
But
holidays
we'll
are
have
coming up.
something for you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
appreciate it, Carlos. Stephanie, so I was literally, like, I was getting ready to dive into the next, like, I had a couple more questions, but I just noticed, like, we're really close to time, and we probably would have ran like 5 or 10 minutes over if we would have gone into that. So I was like, oh, better stop myself. But appreciate you stopping by the show today. I think everything that, a lot of good information to digest. If anybody's interested, Lumavate, Carlos, you got the ticker? put it up on
Yes,
the
right
put it up
here.
on the So I think if you're looking for marketing tech, go check out Lumavate. I think definitely some great stuff there. I was kind of like perusing your website, and so yeah, if you're looking for marketing technology, check out Lumavate. And Stephanie, thanks for stopping by the show.
Thanks for having me.
All right, have a good afternoon.
Thank you.
Bye.